Hulk Hogan being recorded, I'm going to argue, is not a First Amendment issue. For you probably would know this if you find a video on Hulk Hogan. Supposedly, Bubba the Love Sponge and his wife at the time were swingers. They basically got Hulk Hogan to have sex with her. It was recorded. The tape got in the hands of Gawker, and they published like a few seconds of it. I'd argue nothing about that. First of all, speech. Whenever you get into social value, it is somewhat dangerous, and the possibility of defining social value as you agree with it becomes an issue. But there is no argument being made. He was a guy who was sleeping with a girl. If the sex was connected to something larger, maybe. The fact that he may have exaggerated his package size, still not value. The fact that there might be some people who want it. Hey, I think he looks good for a 50, 60 plus year old man. By the way, I'm straight. I have not seen the video. I don't want to see the video. But my point is, just because people want to see it doesn't make it newsworthy. He didn't even consent to having it taped. So having it distributed was truly an invasion of privacy. One report, which, if true, actually does, I think, make legal liability for Bubba and his wife, is he supposedly asked if it was being recorded and they told him no, so they lied to him, so that's fraud. And it has legal social values to him. They did not record it, and he said, oh, the bad part, don't put that out. He said he had no inclination that this was being recorded, nor did they ask for comment or anything else. I am using a recording device as my forum rather than a literal pulpit with a literal audience. But the content of the video is my speech. So I believe this is absolutely protected. The content of that video was a sexual act by two private people. One of them did not consent. There is no value, there is no argument, and there is not much social value, commentary value, other than making fun of Hogan or saying, hey, he's doing really good. There's no social value there, and it's not a speech. As for press, you have stories, you have drawings, you have artistic expression that does not have a victim. When you're talking about certain things that are recorded for the purposes of making profit, if you're committing a crime to do it, then it is perfectly within, then I do believe it is within the government's right to confiscate the evidence of the crime, the motive of the crime in the case of the video, and make it illegal to have the product of a crime. But in the case of modern recording devices, but in the case of speech or advocating a position, if there is no real victim, i.e. you write a story, that's completely different. For example, Terry Goodkind wrote the book Wizard's First Rule. It's about a man who grew up on a farm who finds out that his parents were not who he thought his parents were. He went out on an adventure and saved the world. Aragon, a book about a boy who grew up on a farm who was 16, went out and found out his parents weren't who he thought they were. He went out and saved the world. One of the biggest differences between the two characters or I should say, one of the lack of differences was their age. Aragorn was 16. Richard from Wizard's First Rule was 24. They read very, very similar because they were both in an enclosed environment. And the reason I bring this up is both characters read very similar. So if you're telling me you're writing a particular story and you change a few descriptors and change the ages, suddenly it deems the entire work illegal. No, there's no real person there. And within the context of the story, you can be making an argument, and therefore if the argument is protected, the work is protected, as long as everybody is legally able to consent and does so. But then you get into, like I said, the argument, the story. Then you get into stories that do not necessarily serve an argumentative purpose, but as soon as you make a social value argument, you give those in power the ability to decide whether that story serves a social function, and it's very easy for people to say, well, I agree with it, therefore it does, or because I don't agree with it, it's advocating a position I don't agree with it does not have social value, get rid of it, censorship. So I find the entire thing complicated and interesting. So I absolutely believe Gawker should have lost that lawsuit. Bubba Love Sponge and his wife did Hulk Hogan wrong. Gawker did him wrong. Whether he's a celebrity or not, this was not a position, this was not a paparazzi. This was invading his privacy. And I absolutely believe that he may not have a constitutional right to privacy. They did not have a legal right to publish it, and it was done without his consent. Therefore, there should be legal recourses, civil, and if it's ever a star of underage, criminal. I don't know about criminality in this case. I just hope Gawker doesn't completely avoid punishment and has a recourse. Thank you for listening.